Part 4, Choices Across the Tide. Settings: Los Angeles and Charleston. The weeks after the permanent offer arrived in Los Angeles felt like standing in a storm. Clara wandered the coastline at Venice Beach, her camera heavy around her neck, her thoughts heavier still. The Pacific stretched endless and relentless, and so did the question she had tried to avoid. Did she chase ambition, or love? Every photograph she captured felt like a message to Ethan she hadn't yet sent. Sunsets reflected in broken boardwalk puddles. Surfers in midair, a pelican gliding alone against the horizon. Everything in the city shouted potential. But her heart whispered Charleston. Ethan's storm. Meanwhile, Charleston endured the summer heat and humidity. Hurricane season was looming again, and Ethan's restoration project faced unforeseen complications. Sections of boardwalks weakened by spring tides needed reinforcement. Local officials pushed for deadlines faster than safety allowed. Ethan spent long nights in the office, staring at maps of eroded coastline, imagining the waves swallowing homes he had sworn to protect. Late at night, he stared at his phone, scrolling through Clara's photos from Los Angeles. Bright colors, sharp lines, cinematic frames, but something in him ached at the distance. Does she even think of me in these bright places? He wondered. He texted, "The Atlantic misses you. I do too." A reply came hours later. "I'm thinking of Charleston too. And you." Even thousands of miles apart, love kept threading through the space between them. Reunion in Charleston. Clara decided she needed clarity. She booked a flight back to Charleston for a long weekend. Ethan met her at the small airport, hands slightly sweaty, heart pounding. She hadn't seen him for weeks, and the sight of him made her forget her doubts, her fears, even her ambition for a moment. They drove back along familiar streets, past Rainbow Row, past old brick buildings glowing softly in late afternoon light. "I missed this," she admitted quietly. "I know," Ethan said. "And I missed you." They walked along the pier, where the Atlantic shimmered in the sunset. The air smelled like salt, like home, like possibility. "I have to tell you something," she said. "LA offered me a permanent position." Ethan nodded slowly, the familiar ache settling in his chest. "And?" he asked. "I haven't accepted yet," she confessed. "Because I don't want to make a choice out of fear. Or obligation." He reached for her hand. "Then don't. Make it because it feels right. For you." She looked into his eyes and felt something steady, anchoring, stronger than ambition or fear. Facing reality. Over the next days, they moved through Charleston as if rediscovering it together. They ate shrimp and grits at a small cafe, walked along Sullivan's Island at dawn, sat at Waterfront Park while gulls wheeled overhead, and yet, every shared moment carried the unspoken question. Could they survive her decision without breaking each other? Late one night, sitting on the porch, Ethan spoke. "If you go back to LA, I'll support you. But I won't pretend it won't hurt." Clara leaned against him. "I know. And if I stay, I won't pretend it's easy either." "We could try," he whispered. "Try?" she asked. "Try choosing each other, even when the world is pulling us in different directions." The wind whispered through the oaks. Somewhere across the harbor, the church bells chimed. It was terrifying. And necessary. The decision. Clara spent the night thinking. The Pacific had been calling her. Los Angeles had promised opportunity, growth, reinvention. But the Atlantic, the steady tide of Charleston, the warmth of familiarity, the possibility of building a life with Ethan, called louder. Morning arrived. She walked to the pier, the sunrise spilling gold across the water. Ethan was already there. "I've made a decision," she said. He waited, breath caught. "I'm staying in Charleston." Relief and joy washed across his face. He pulled her into an embrace, careful, gentle, like handling something precious. "This isn't settling," he said. "This is choosing us." Clara smiled through tears. "And this feels like home." The waves lapped at their feet. Gulls cried overhead. Charleston breathed around them, and for the first time in months, everything felt aligned. Planting roots. Over the next weeks, Clara settled back into Charleston life, but with a new perspective. She began photographing local culture, festivals, the life of the harbor, finding beauty in what she had almost taken for granted. Ethan, too, felt a renewed energy in his work. He spent long evenings with Clara on the pier, discussing plans not just for projects, but for life. Love wasn't easy. Love didn't erase their scars. But it offered a path forward, a shared tide they could navigate together. And in Charleston, beneath the Atlantic sun and moon, Clara and Ethan learned what it meant to choose love deliberately, courageously, and fully. Part 5, Anchored Hearts. Setting: Charleston. Summer in Charleston arrived with the heavy scent of jasmine and salt. The streets buzzed with tourists, children ran along cobblestones, and the Atlantic shimmered like molten glass. For Clara and Ethan, life had shifted from fragile beginnings to something steadier, though no less thrilling. Their love was no longer a series of cautious steps. It was intentional, deliberate, rooted in mutual understanding. Building a life together. Clara opened a small photography studio in the historic district. She filled it with prints of Charleston's streets, harbor scenes, and intimate portraits of the city's people. The space doubled as a gallery where locals could see her work, and tourists could take home a piece of the city's heartbeat. Ethan, meanwhile, took on a leadership role in the coastal restoration project. He worked long hours but always returned to Clara, to the porch overlooking the pier, to the quiet reassurance of her presence. One evening, while reviewing architectural plans together, Clara looked up at him. "You know," she said softly, "I never thought I'd choose a city over LA." Ethan chuckled. "I'm glad you did." She leaned against him. "I didn't choose Charleston. I chose us." He kissed her forehead. "And that's the bravest choice." First storm together. The first hurricane of the season tested them. Winds tore through the coast, and heavy rain hammered the streets. But unlike before, they faced it side by side. Ethan coordinated the emergency reinforcements for the pier and nearby homes. Clara documented the storm from safe distances, photographing the power of nature and the resilience of the city. They checked in constantly, texting photos and updates. By the time the storm passed, Charleston had endured minor damage, and their trust had deepened. Standing on the pier afterward, soaked but triumphant, Clara squeezed Ethan's hand. "We survived," she said. "We always will," he replied. Deepening bonds. The months passed, each day layering familiarity with passion. They cooked together, hosted friends, and traveled to nearby low-country islands, exploring tidal marshes and old plantations. They discovered joy in shared routines. Morning coffees at the local cafe, lazy Sundays by the harbor, evenings watching the sun set behind sailboats. Clara grew more confident as an artist. Her work began appearing in regional exhibitions. Ethan became a mentor to younger engineers, passing on not only technical skills but the lesson of resilience, learned from both hurricanes and heartbreak. They laughed more easily. They argued more constructively. They loved more deliberately. Facing the future. One crisp autumn evening, as the sun cast long shadows over Charleston's streets, Ethan stopped Clara on the pier. "I've been thinking," he said, "about us. About the future." Clara turned, curious. "I want to build a home here, with you. Not just a studio or a project, but a life. Permanently." Tears welled in her eyes. "I've been hoping you'd say that." He pulled a small box from his pocket. Inside was a simple, elegant ring. "Clara Bennett," he said, voice steady, "will you marry me?" She laughed through tears and nodded, barely able to speak. "Yes. Of course, yes." They embraced, the Atlantic breeze whipping around them, a witness to the love they had carefully nurtured. Anchored Hearts. The following months were filled with preparation, joy, and community. Friends celebrated their engagement. Charleston's streets, the place that had witnessed the first flicker of their connection, became the backdrop for planning a wedding that was intimate, heartfelt, and uniquely theirs. They were no longer defined by distance or past loss. They were defined by choice, courage, and partnership. On their wedding day, the sun rose over the Atlantic as Clara and Ethan exchanged vows at the pier where their love had begun. The waves whispered around them. Gulls cried overhead. Charleston breathed beneath the heat and salt of the morning. And in that moment, they understood fully. Love was not the absence of risk or challenge. Love was choosing, day after day, to face the tides together. No storm, no city, no ambition could separate them. They had found not just each other, but a home in each other's hearts.